Welcome to the 5 o'clock club. Grab a glass of wine, a cup of tea, whatever you like. We are live here in my studio, Cobourg, Ontario, Canada. Cobourg is a little community on the north shore of Lake Ontario. If you could walk across from Rochester, you'd be here. So welcome. In this hour, I'm going to give a live demonstration on how one of these art pieces is created, how the vessel is created, how the narrative in the vessel happens, and actually I'm going to start with how I wrap the sticks with wire and stuff like that. So come along for the ride and we will start. Yay! I'm going to just move this off. So, this is my studio table. Lots happens here. And we're going to start the demonstration with a demo on how I wrap all these sticks. And I'm just going to be moving this over here for a second. And I'm just going to quickly adjust my camera a little bit down here. Okay. There. Great. Okay. I start off with this machine. It actually is an old sewing machine that my son put a drill chuck on, and instead of wrapping a bobbin, it wraps a stick. So I just put the stick in here, close it up. Oh, I'm opening it. Close it up and tighten it really well. And then I'm pretty much ready to go. See if I pretend I'm sewing. Instead, it turns. So then I get my wire from a whole bunch of different old machines. So it's all the wire is been reclaimed, and that I don't know where the wire comes from. I mean, they come in all different sizes. Like you can see, here's a really big one that came from a grain elevator. A farmer, was sad that a grain elevator broke. Meanwhile, I got the wire, so I'm pretty happy about that. And, any machine in your house not working, you're frustrated, with it, just smash it apart. Beautiful wire inside. Okay, so I will just start wrapping this like this, and I will tighten it and start here. Okay. And you can see that even though it's quite detailed, that it wraps up quite evenly. And you can even go quite fast if your wire uncoils. So I'm just uncoiling the wire, and you can see. Like, it's kind of fun to do it. And it's a good thing because so many of my pieces have this in it. So it's kind of fun to just kind of work on it. Whoops. there we go. Okay, so then I can just unscrew it like that, cut the wire, and I've got a beautiful stick. So now I am going to lift this machine down. And we'll keep going on the process. So as you know, when you do artwork, every step of the way, one is making decisions. And, in what I just showed you, it's like, oh, what kind of copper should I use? Should I use dark, red, just ordinary, thin, thick, whatever. And also, what kind of stick should I use? So some sticks become pretty special for where they've been formed and how they're formed. And it's very sculptural kind of thing. Like sticks are, well, in my mind, sticks take on like a dance, like the earth dance, like a signature pose. The whole concept of trees, branch. So that's how, when I'm working with sticks, I just love just not only their shape and all that, but where they come from. These two sticks came from the Barron Canyon area, and that's in northern Ontario, close to Algonquin Park, where the Great Lakes rushed through as they formed into, or the water rushed through and formed the Great Lakes. So, it's, it takes on an extra significance then. So then, we've got, in preparing for this, I wrapped a bunch of sticks, and, you can see how they can start taking shape, how an art piece can start taking shape. But now, we need the copper. And for that, I get the copper off a big roll, and I put it in the fire. Obviously, we're not going to demo that, but look what happens when I make the fire in the backyard and get it at just the perfect temperature. Look what happens with heat to the copper. And again, so much of my work, I'm working with the found object. I'm working with the given and that. And so even in this kind of copper, I'm like working with the given in the color of it. And again, so we talk about, making decisions. Again, we have to think about, what color do I want this copper? Like, do I want this blue? Do I want the red? Or, heck, I could even flip it over and work with this. It all becomes a matter of aesthetic choice. So with working in the vessel shape, I would choose a portion right like that. And for that, then I would measure it, cut it, and shape it. And for this demo, I did this one here. So you can see then, hey, how it comes from the whole roll of copper, how the copper then is put in the fire, and how it's shaped. And it just becomes like a beautiful universal shape. I used to work more on the plate, and the concept of, gathering a narrative, gathering stories, preparing or circle, the round, the seasons going round, working with that concept. And then for my studio got larger, my palette got larger, and the plate became elongated into, I think it's just a beautiful shape. So now we take the sticks, wrapped, and we make decisions about how we're going to add it on, which ones should go where, how many do I want. And in getting ready for this demo, I did this here. And you can see I used a red stick and a beautiful copper colored stick. And it just forms a beautiful shape. To connect it to the copper, I simply kind of stitch it on. I make holes in the copper, and then I add the wire, just connecting it to it. I was trained as a sculptor in the late 70s, and one sculptor that really influenced me in my work was Mark de Soubrio. And you might remember him from the sculptures that you see. He has some sculptures in Grant Park in Chicago and in many other different places. But he worked with large welded found objects, so like beams and machinery parts and that, and he welded them together, he bolted them together. And the one thing that was so important was to let the process show. And I think when we're working with found objects, and in my case found material, it's the process that the material have brought to, it's the process that the materials have gone through that adds to the narrative. So in this case, when I work with the vessel, and when I work with wrapping the sticks and putting the framing the vessel, sculpting the sticks around the copper, I allow all the connections to show. I also allow the color of the copper to come through. And I should mention that once I burnish it, then I spray paint it. I just spray it with like a trim clad, and that's exactly what we use on our cars, right? Like if you bring your car to a body shop, they might use trim clad as well. But that's just to hold the copper in, hold the color of the copper. And I always think in terms of 100 years. So that should be good for 100 years. So now we've cut the copper, we've sculpted the copper. We have wrapped sticks around it, or we've wrapped the sticks, we've framed in the cut copper with the wrap sticks. And now we can continue to explore different creative possibilities. And that's one thing when you work with a found object, like there's constant possibilities. And someone once asked me, what is your starting point? And I must say my starting point is always the concept of boundaries. Like, what size is this piece going to be? And, I started this presentation showing like a framed piece. And so I have that already set. So I know that, I can't go larger than, well, in this case, 40 inches and in length. So then I can start playing around with it and in that. Often when I'm working, it's like just this kind of, just doing this, it immediately triggers all kinds of ideas for the next piece. So we have this set. So far, I'm loving it. And that's kind of like, the pretty basic element is just like each step of the way, I like make sure that I'm like, oh my goodness, I love it. And of course, as it goes on, you might be thinking, oh, this isn't quite working. But each step of the way, I'm just trying to make this work. So, I'm also known as a textile artist. And, so instead of painting, I use color. I get my color from textiles. I used to do a lot of weaving, and I still have some pieces here that, just haven't found that spot yet. Sometimes I simply cut clothes, and just cut a little strip here or there. Bathing suit material, painted, comes from a very expensive skirt on sale, thankfully. And it's just kind of interesting sometimes where the pieces come from. Sometimes they come, sometimes I purchase sometimes I purchase the fabrics at the Textile Museum in Toronto, Ontario here. And I like doing that for it. It carries not only color and texture and all that, but it also carries culture and a narrative of who made it, what was the textiles used for. And even if you use just a little snippet of one thing, like this little piece came off a remnant of a ceremonial robe from Northeast Asia area. Here is an old beaded work that I've cut and used. It's kind of fun. This is felt from a piano, and just that color and the wool felt. It's just it's not only fun, but it also adds meaning to it. But yes, this is how work happens. This is like a hand crocheted piece that my people did, way back in Holland. Both my parents lived through World War II in Holland, and that has just so totally influenced my work. I think I might have mentioned before, it's like we might not always know the narrative of a cloth, or we might not always hear the person tell the stories. But if we have the work of their hands, then some of their stories are captured in that. And I think that's important, and that's kind of good to work with. So this is, as I said, my paint. This is how I get my color. And we can work on this piece here. And I'm always surprised with how absolute random it is, how I can't really plan it, because I don't know, how this will look with that. But, even little things that I snip off an old piece takes on a real thing of aesthetic importance. Working in this, I put together some different elements. Like, I love the concept of color on color on color. Like, what happens when you do that? And I love what happened here. And again, this piece is hand stitched. I purchased it at the Textile Museum, and it comes with stories, even though we don't necessarily know the stories. This is some new fabric. This is fabric that I painted, and this is, just some kind of random. But so we can start layering, writing the story, painting the narrative, putting in the different things, and we can play around with shape, with color, with textures. Some things work, and in a way, I don't quite know how to say this, but it's a pretty illogical process. Like, like who would have thought that these two things on top of each other like that, juxtaposed, put like this, looks fantastic, or not. I mean, maybe it looks fantastic, but then after working with it, and you think, nah, that doesn't quite work. And I always love to use stones. For stones, they tell that story as well. They tell the story of the earth. And not that we necessarily know where the stone has come from, or what the history of it was, but it just kind of bears its soul, so to speak. This quartz actually came from my brother and sister-in-law's farm in North Carolina. It's this gorgeous, gorgeous quartz. So you can see then, how it starts to take shape. You can see how it becomes a story in and of itself. You can see how if you take things away or add them, it becomes quite important, or it makes a huge difference, rather. And then we can still add more things. We could change the flow of direction. Oh, the other thing I could do is I could add piano hammers. I often work with piano hammers, and someone gave me this old piano, and I didn't quite know what to do with it. But then inside that piano was the most beautiful hammers. And since then I've gotten a number of them, because there's actually, I hate to say this, but a lot of old pianos that people aren't just using anymore. But look, see these colors? See the wool hammers here? And what you could do is I could add them to the piece like this. And that's kind of fun. It really changes the feel of it. You can see how it goes like that. Again, like that. Sometimes they come in red as well. I haven't quite figured out how to put different color hammers in the same piece, but yeah, it's all good. So then, I'll just show you this too. Here's some more piano parts. And again, every piano has different colors. And if I put these on, what would it look like? Obviously, I wouldn't put them with the hammers, or what if I did? That kind of thing. So now it's like this, and I have to just think about how I'm going to keep it all together. And someone asked me what kind of glue I use. I do use glue, but I don't trust glue. What I always do is stitch it. I just put wire in a needle and thread, and just stitch with a pair of pliers, really. So I'll just do 1 or 2 pieces on here, and I'll show you that. So here is, again, just some wire, not as thick as what we wrap the stick with, and just an ordinary needle. And, you know, I just put the wire through the needle, the eye of the needle. You don't want it too big. You know, my mom taught me to sew when I was 10, and I tried sewing my own clothes. Didn't work that great. I don't think she quite knows that I'm right now. Yes, I'm sewing all the time, but I'm sewing with a pair of pliers. But that's all good. So, I'm just going to put this under here. And basically, when I sew the pieces in the canoe here, I just start right underneath here, pushing it up like this. And sometimes you have to work at it a little bit. Actually, hang on, I'll do something a little easier. Yeah, needles break. I get pricked. But in the end, it all works. So, I often both sew it and I glue, but I make sure the glue is very hidden. Whereas, again, with these stitches, I might just let the weld show, let the bolt show, let the process of the making show. So I might just leave it just the way it is and just allow it to show. And then pull it through. And you know that old thing of haste makes waste. Well, I'm trying to do it quickly here, but you can see I'm tangling up a bit here, but that's okay. It's all good. We'll figure it out. Okay. Okay. So that then is stitched right through it. And that's also, when I mounted this whole finished piece on, to getting it ready to be framed, I mounted on like an acid-free foam board, and I just stitch it right onto that as well. So that's something that, has worked. And yeah, it does take a bit of muscle. Okay. Okay. So, you can see how the pieces start to happen. And within, in 8 hours, I could probably have this then finished, mounted, and framed. So after one decides make all the aesthetic decisions, then there is still quite a lot of work on mounting and framing and that. So, and just making it happen. I'll show you a couple pieces that are all set, and you can see the process and you can see how that worked. I'm just looking at my time here, but this is my studio. But so look at this piece. It's called Tandem, and it is here. I'll just arrange the camera. It is on the Rittenhouse website. Ready? And I'll just put this out of the way here. So look, you can see how all these little pieces started out. And I guess one demo that I didn't do this time was I didn't use my sewing machine, but like you can imagine then how all of these pieces are like colors layered on color, random pieces of fabric layered, and then I sew it, and then I place it in the canoe shape, the vessel shape. So it's kind of like gathering the stories of all of this. Here I put the piano piece right in the canoe. Here is a piece of quartz. And then here is, again, some random, I use that word random, but really what I mean to say is, what happens is always a bit of a surprise. What happens when this fabric goes with that? It's something that I can never kind of predict, but yet when it happens, when the fabric work together, like you get a wonderful kind of sense of, well, different cultures coming together. I mean, different narratives, different cultures, different uses of the fabric. So like even in this, well, let's take this square here. There's a little bit of woven piece from Sierra Leone. There's a little piece that I painted. There's a tiny little piece of the red that came from that ceremonial cloth that I was talking about. And it just all kind of worked together. There's also a piece of brand new fabric, and there's a piece of fabric that, I cut from a dress. Like, my rule is I can never cut from something still in use. So, but sometimes, when I go to a secondhand shop or that, even sometimes a new store or a new dress or pant or whatever, but if there's a really beautiful design on it, nothing like a good scissors, But so putting that together just kind of creates a little visual poem, and it becomes like a little, like a poem. So then many of those little poems happen, little visual squares. I'm not quite using the correct words, but I just love what happens with the color. And I love what happens when, they're captured in that kind of vessel shape and then working with the sticks. I also have this piece, and this piece is on the Rittenhouse Square gift as well, and that's so you can see how when it's framed, so instead of putting all of the little things in a canoe-like shape, this time I put it in a square. And again, I used the same quartz, playing with color, concept of a leaf, working with a fossil. And then here is some stitching from a 19th century crazy quilt that, I purchased at the Textile Museum. but it just carries so much, not only beauty, but also narrative. And then, I juxtapose that over some new fabric, some fabric that I painted, and that kind of thing. So, it's kind of wonderful to create. I just love what happens when all these different things come together. With the coil, I'll just show you where I got that from. This is actually, I have to go to a welding shop. And, between my inability to say what I'm needing, what I'm looking for, not quite knowing the name, and the guys that worked in the welding shops, inability to visualize what I was saying, it took about 40 minutes for us to finally figure out kind of what I was wanting. And so it's basically the wire that you use when you're welding. It's coated with this black. And then, but if you cut it open with an X-Acto knife, look, you get this beautiful copper in it, and you can just wind it into a really powerful circle, and you can feel the energy from that. So it's kind of fun. And again, using that concept of circle, and how the seasons go around, and the presenting of the narrative. So, and then we can come back to this piece here, and I'll just try to, this piece that we started with, and you can now see how the copper has been shaped and formed, and that. Okay. I'm conscious about not wanting to move the camera too much. So I'm wondering if you have questions. I have my assistant here, Megan, and she'll ask me if you have any questions. Megan, are there some questions?
Do you always use copper in your pieces?
Yes, I love copper, and I find there's such a richness of copper. Plus, it's very malleable. Like I literally, if I buy it thin enough, I can sew through it. I can, attach things to it. It's just the perfect medium. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit more about the term vessel in your work?
Yeah. A vessel is the concept of gathering. I started out talking about the plate, and in a sense, the plate is like a vessel. My work started a lot with the idea of gathering and honoring women's work, and I mentioned that my folks were in Holland during World War II, but part of that family history is that my aunt hid Jewish people and was part of the resistance, and we never got her stories. She never talked about them, but we did get her handwork, like the work of her hands, like all her sewing and her crocheting and all that. So when I started work, I wanted to honor the work of the women who worked in the war, and so that was kind of like a starting point, and the vessel just seemed like that perfect container. And so even though it's not the plate as in the round plate, it's now the concept of vessel. And there's that other thing with the vessel, and that is that it's symbolic of well, of the canoe, and it transports you, and it carries you either literally or metaphorically. So it's kind of a neat shape to work with. Thanks.
I think that's all for questions.
Okay.
There's lots of kind comments that you can look at afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, so this has been really fun. The Rittenhouse Square folks, they have put on a pop-up gallery, holiday pop-up gallery. So go to that. There's lots of work on there. I think about 50 artists have 4 pieces on it. So, while we're staying at home through this pandemic, buy yourself some art and you'll be happy. I just shipped a piece to this woman and she said, "Oh, it arrived. I'm just not going to open it until Christmas Eve." So, it's just, she's just bought herself a present, a Christmas present.
Alice, one more question did come in.
Yeah.
Do you drill the rock or to attach or glue them? Do you incorporate words or thoughts in the work?
The question is, do I drill the rocks? Sometimes I do, and but usually I glue it, and then I also wrap it with wire to keep it on. So, with this, I will, if I was putting this in the piece, I would first glue it, and I'll just grab that glue that I use. It's called Industrial Glues It, and I get it at the Home Hardware store here. And, on the packaging, it has a picture of a transport truck, like, it's supposed to be super, super strong. And so when I do the rocks, I glue it and attach it, but then I never count on the glue to hold. I mean, of course it will, but and just even to add to the aesthetic story, I then would stitch it real quick like this. And again, one thing of wire or 2. Usually I do like a cross or an X over it. And you can see. So there's a rock, it's not going anywhere. But let me just show you also some rocks that I just had drilled. Just stones from the beach. And I hired a guy to drill holes in them. But it adds a totally different visual story. Look, isn't that cool? Just imagine what you could do with that. Love it. Okay. Wow, this has been really, really fun. And yeah, I encourage you to go to the Rittenhouse Square pop-up holiday gallery, and you will find some beautiful, beautiful pieces there. So until we get to see each other again, hopefully either in Philadelphia or Toronto or anywhere really, until we get to see each other again, stay safe everybody, and thank you for joining us, and be well. Thank you.